Hello YouTube. Have you wondered how our world is going to change over the next 12 months and what it will ultimately end up looking like on January 1st, 2027? In the following video, I'm going to provide y'all with some of my predictions for the upcoming year. I'm going to start out with my sports predictions. If you're not interested in my sports predictions, skip to the time on the screen. Let's start with baseball. The sport is getting a big technological upgrade in 2026 because it will be the first year that the MLB will be debuting robot umpires. These won't be humanoids standing behind the plate. Instead, they are a collection of cameras capturing the plate at multiple angles. Human umpires will still make the call of ball or strike. However, teams will have an opportunity to challenge a call when they disagree with what was called on the field. Will this change how the game is played? Well, some of the advantages of the new system that experts have pointed out include a standardized zone. The strike zone will be more consistent across every umpire and every game, removing the unpredictability of human umpires. There's going to be a reduced catcher framing, which basically means the catchers can no longer steal strikes by framing pitches, changing their stance to more fit a more beneficial strike zone for their team. Well, with this technology, they're not going to be able to do that, as the system relies on the ball's precise location as it passes the plate and not the catcher's framing ability. There will be strategic adjustments with the pitchers and the batters. They must adjust to a zone that may differ from what they are accustomed to, changing their approach to breaking balls and edge of the zone pitches. Now, this new technology also comes with a new challenge system, so teams will have a limited number of challenges to contest ball or strike calls, two challenges to be exact, adding a new layer of game strategy. If you're wondering how this will affect the pace of the game, in minor league testing, which has been going on for a few years now, the technology has been associated with faster game times. Actually, to my surprise. According to the MLB, a typical challenge for a similar system used in the minor leagues takes about 13 seconds, which isn't too bad because there's some reviews by the referees in other sports that take much longer than that. Now, what is my prediction on how the 2026 season will end? I think Toronto is going to win the World Series this year in 5 games, and the AL will have home field advantage. For some of these leagues, my predictions are going to be a little more short and sweet. In the NBA, I believe the Denver Nuggets will win in 6 games against the Toronto Raptors this June. For the National Hockey League, I think the Avalanche will win Stanley Cup in 6 games. For the NFL, I think we will see a return of the old guard. I think the Bengals are going to have a better season this upcoming season. The Ravens, I'm still unsure about, but I think they're going to have a better season as well. However, the Bills, the Steelers, and the Chiefs will be disappointing. I think the Steelers are going to really suffer under Mike McCarthy, and the Chiefs will have to contend with an injured Mahomes for the first part of the season, which I think is going to affect how the rest of their season progresses. They might be able to make the playoffs, but I think they're going to lose in the divisional round. For this year's March Madness, I think UConn, Duke, Houston, and Illinois will be in the Final Four, with Houston winning it all against UConn, handing them their first loss in the final. Non-conference play in the winter for the next season is going to be wild. As for college football, It's already been a wild year with the Hoosiers winning it all with Fernando Mendoza as the quarterback. Indiana will have a championship hangover, and I think for the upcoming season, the SEC will continue to be exposed, and Indiana will not be the championship of the Big Ten. It will be Ohio State in 2026. I think BYU will win the Big 12, Miami will win the ACC, and Georgia will win the SEC. For the 2026 Winter Olympics, or the rest of it, I think there is going to be a big political theme surrounding solidarity around immigration and some countries that have received the ire of the current U.S. administration. There are going to be plenty of messages on X criticizing American athletes for making subtle displays of political beliefs. I think the U.S. is still going to receive the highest medal count at the end. The 2026 World Cup will have many of the same themes as the Winter Olympics. Plenty of subtle political messaging. I think Canada and Mexico will have a successful World Cup, while the U.S. World Cup will be okay with underwhelming turnout. There will be plenty of controversy surrounding aggressive immigration enforcement around American event sites. Mexico will make it to the Final Four. However, it will be France that will win it all. With 2026 being a midterm election year, I think it's going to be full of lots of political stories. And what will be those biggest political stories of 2026? I think the political situation is going to grow increasingly tense in the lead up to the midterms. To just put it bluntly, I think the Democrats are going to win in a landslide. I think the real question is whether they will receive the Adelita Grijalva treatment in 2027 and have issues with being sworn in. There are growing conspiracies suggesting that Donald Trump may attempt to subvert the results of the midterm elections. My prediction on the economy, I just want to bring it up because I believe economic conditions are a big influence on the final result of elections. The U.S. economy will be in a steep recession by the end of the year. The tax returns will be disappointing this tax season, not nearly enough to help fix Americans' cost of living issues. Inflation will begin to go out of control in the summer as a newly appointed Fed chairman in May will affect monetary policy. Inflation will be between 10 to 15%, and that is just the government figures. The realistic figures will most likely be much higher, and this will have an effect on the election. Because I just believe when economic situations get more dire and severe, that this radicalizes more people, makes them more desperate. They turn to people that offer quick solutions instead of the best solution. I also believe ICE raids will be at the max right before November to create lots of chaos as an excuse to cancel the elections. This will be the first election where concerns about the impact of AI will affect voter sentiments leading up to the elections. There will be politicians arguing that the U.S. should take a more gradual approach to adopting AI technology and whether there should be more regulation on it being implemented in the workplace and in public. And well, there is going to be the other side that claims that we should put as few limitations as possible on artificial intelligence technology, because the benefits will ultimately outweigh the negatives and we shouldn't have nothing to worry about. I think some issues that were seen as fringe issues, like universal basic income, robotics and automation in the workplace and in public, and other things surrounding AI, will become topics that will be heard more this election season. Politicians will be debating the ethics of passing laws that are either beneficial or a detriment to data centers. They will argue about the major technological benefits versus the vast environmental and economic impacts on people's wallets as they look to pay their energy bills. It has been an eventful first month for geopolitics in 2026. America has reestablished an interventionist foreign policy in the Western Hemisphere, including action against Venezuela and threats against numerous other countries in the region and around the world. A big theme of this year, I believe, is that while America is forcing a rupture in the current international geopolitical order and losing standing on the global stage, America's enemies for decades will have no time to celebrate as they will face an existential crisis of their own. There is going to be big change in Cuba. Multiple aspects of Cuban society are reaching a breaking point as we speak, as the country struggles to survive against a 6-decade-long American embargo and the Venezuela issue with their lack of oil feeding the Cuban economy. And let's just face it, communism sucks, and there are just self-imposed challenges because of their unique communist system. The communist regime won't violently collapse. It will more be like a quiet whimper that slowly fades off into the night, like roadkill on a highway, slowly bleeding out in the middle of the night. Iran will also face disaster. I don't think that it is the political issues that will be the tipping point. It will be the environmental disaster that is unfolding because of the ongoing drought afflicting the country. I think Ukraine and Russia will continue down a familiar path we have seen during the last few years. However, in the last few months, both sides have really started engaging in robotics ground warfare. So this year, I expect that type of warfare to have a much bigger presence on the battlefield. And I wonder what that will mean for the outcome of the war. It will depend on who can produce more mobile armor, who can recruit the proper expertise to run these systems, and who can procure raw materials the easiest. Now, onto movies. Taking a look at what the next year of cinema will be like, for example, which movie will be the most popular? There are several movies expected to come out: Avengers Doomsday, The Odyssey, or 28 Years Later. I think the most popular will be a superhero movie, Avengers Doomsday. Now let's start discussing how technology is going to evolve in the upcoming year. AI is going to continue to be the biggest story in technology this year, as it has been in the last couple of years. AI is set to continue to improve on itself at an exponential rate. A prominent CEO has already predicted that sometime in the year 2026, I am going to personally say November, AI is going to replace most software engineering jobs. We will hear more about how AI is going to take away more entry-level white-collar positions. The first ones immediately to be at risk are call centers, customer service roles, and other data entry roles. We're also going to see this summer the class of 2026 graduate, and I think in the fall colleges are really going to start launching advertising campaigns strategized and organized around the idea of preparing these college students for a workplace where AI has a presence, perhaps a leadership presence. And if we are going to talk about technology, I think it's important to talk about self-driving vehicles. More American cities are expected to see self-driving taxi services become available in their areas. Several news stations have mentioned that they're aiming to start these services in as many as 20 cities. As many as 20 states have already passed legislation permitting the use of self-driving technology. And perhaps next year, this technology will be in the 100 largest cities. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this self-driving technology is going to experience different obstacles, including weather and local government policy. For robotics, I believe that this year will be the first year where we really start seeing the beginnings of humanoid robotics being introduced in the workplace at the rate where it will begin affecting human hiring and other vital business decisions. There will still be lots of supervision required, but it will definitely change the dynamic of the workplace. Automation has been taking jobs for a while. I think we are going to see companies bring that technology out to the sales floor and expose the public to it much more. Many experts in the industry believe that up to 50% of entry-level white-collar jobs will be replaced in the next few years. In the area of drone technology, we are going to see expanded drone delivery services. These drones will come in both the aerial and ground type. Autonomous food delivery services have already been introduced in Phoenix and Tucson here in Arizona. However, for example, here in Tucson, they're only in the University of Arizona area. Sometime this year, they will expand into the downtown area. And I think in the rest of the country, I think you will see this service expanded into a big city near you. Talking about flying cars, China has announced late last year that they aim to privatize and liberalize low airspace in order to jumpstart the drone delivery and flying car economy. In the US, there is already one service route provided. In terms of medical advancements, I expect to hear more stories in the coming months about how AI has helped researchers arrive to their discoveries. Looking up into the cosmos, this year is supposed to feature our big return to the moon. And, well, technically not quite, because we're just doing a fly around the moon. But it is the closest humans have been since the actual moon landings. I believe that's going to be delayed a few times, so probably late March will be the launch date. When it lifts off, I believe it will be a success and help lay the groundwork for the next step in the Artemis mission. The Chinese will be trying to get in on the action as well, with their own lunar moon missions. We will hear about other countries making experimental entrances into the space race as well. For example, last year Australia attempted to launch its first rocket into space, and I think we will hear similar stories from other countries this year as well. How will social issues be affected this year? Given the current political environment, I believe that there are going to be several cultural wars that will occur this year, as we have already seen. Just in the month of January alone, I think Americans will increasingly start becoming more negative towards how they view the ICE organization and its heavy-handed tactics in enforcing immigration law across the country, especially in parts of the country that aren't near the border and don't see maybe some of the more negative effects as seen near the border. Also, I think people are just going to continue to fight a campaign of expressing themselves, whether it is the LGBTQ community, different racial and ethnic groups expressing pride in their identity, or any other thing that makes people special. If you have ever read the book Brave New World, perhaps that was assigned to you in high school, like it was to me, you know that they predict a dystopian future void of morality. I think some aspects of that is going to really be pushed in the next year. For example, in the book, they had everyone take a miracle drug that made them happy and content, and in our world, we are seeing the rise of Ozempic, a magic pill that will make people skinny without having to necessarily do all of the hard work. And we are going to see a real clash continued between the body positivity and acceptance movement and the other segment of society that believes doing what is best and healthiest for your body is a must. We are going to see a continuation of relationship trends from the last few years. And by that, I mean they are going to intensify. I think there are going to be two extremes in our society when it comes to relationships, with very few people in between. There is going to be the one segment that is going to be really open with relationships, and our society will kind of experience the 1960s sexual relationship liberation, as they like to call it back then. And going back to that book, Brave New World, the book predicts that there's a much more libertarian approach to viewing relationships, and I think that's what our society is heading towards. Like, this segment is going to be more willing to experiment and try new things, and people are going to use technology to their advantage to help find a connection in life. I think there's going to be like a more expression of the LGBTQ community. You're going to see more actors in those type of relationships appear more in shows this year in 2026, and we go further and further away from 2016. I think high schoolers, they're gonna be not having to face as much stigma surrounding that lifestyle, and they're going to be experimenting and looking into that lifestyle more at a younger age than older generations have. Now, this other segment, they're going to be suffering from a form of social isolation. They're going to reject marriage and relationships and live an independent lifestyle. Now, it's gonna be unsure whether that lifestyle is gonna be voluntary or involuntary, but we're going to continue to see a drop in the birth rate in general and in teen pregnancies. We will see a rise in virginity and an increase in the age when people lose their virginity. An entire age group will face a social double whammy of pandemic lockdowns, economically imposed independent living. By that I mean people just don't have the money to go out on dates anymore. Compared to like the 20th century, where you needed to kind of be in a relationship to survive economically, it's kind of like the opposite nowadays, where economic barriers prevent you from getting into a relationship rather than forcing you into a relationship. And finally, exploring the world of digital social isolation. Globally, there is going to be a bigger political divide between the two genders. However, in the US, I think there is going to be a difference. There is going to be a big shift among men. Men will swing to the left by a big margin. Women will only become more left-wing as the year progresses. In fashion, 2026 is going to be pushing the boundaries of what has been considered acceptable. The whole trans dressing thing is going to pick up steam, and women are going to see how much skin they can get away with showing out in public. People are also going to veer away from name brands and go thrifting for clothes hard. By the way, it is the year of the fire horse for the Chinese Lunar New Year. My prediction for what the weather will be like this year is influenced by that fact. I think this year will be the hottest year ever. A sharp rise in the demand for electricity to power data centers will have countries thinking twice about what resources they use to produce energy, putting technological gain ahead of environmental safety. I do believe we influence global climate through human action. So if you don't agree, that may be the reason why you have a different opinion on what this year will bring weather-wise. I think fall and winter will come later this year. People will notice a noticeable change in their local weather patterns. Arizona and the Southwest will set all-time highs this year around late June. Tucson will set an all-time high of 119 degrees on June 17th. The region will have to start contending with a more dire water situation. Regional governments may have to act before Washington can come up with a solution. Regardless of weather, the region is seeing a sharp increase in the construction of data centers that consume a concerning amount of water to keep the facilities operational. All the geopolitical chaos in the Caribbean will be exacerbated by a more active hurricane season later this year. The administration in Washington will have to contend with its first Category 5 storm of its second tenure. I think that storm is going to hit Cuba and the South Florida area. Nothing is going right for the government in Havana, and I think a June hurricane is going to be the final nail in the coffin for that country. It will shut down the lone refinery, solar panels will be damaged en masse. Will the government have the resources to deploy security forces to locations riled up with anti-government dissent? I think Donald Trump is wrong on climate change, and he is going to be proven wrong when every natural disaster conceivable breaks records this year. To sum up all of my meteorological predictions for this year, I think this year is going to experience record-breaking heat and the consequences as a result of that. Just in the few days of 2026, so much has happened already, both domestically and internationally. There is so much more I could mention, but that would be a lot to fit in one YouTube video. What do you think of my predictions? I'd love to hear your opinions in the comment section below. Thank you for tuning in, and don't forget to like and subscribe.